I hope those of you listening have been following along because this has been one jam-packed series we've been doing. Jon and I have been doing an ongoing series of episodes aimed at helping you, listener on the other side, understand the inner workings of a survivor system and all of its moving parts. This is an evolving series of new information every episode to help break down the ins and outs of therapy from a therapist perspective to help those of you on the other side of the screen know what to expect from a good therapist if you are someone who's healing from extreme childhood trauma, as well as to function as a tool for all of you survivors and advocates watching who are new to learning about systems and parts in order to gain a better understanding of some things you probably weren't taught in formal education. Jon has been giving us a thorough presentation on all the different layers of programming, dissociation, and system and parts, as well as answering your questions about journaling, triggers, boundaries, psychopathy, holding and removing boulders and knapsacks, and even some fun role play for us to consider what living with DID may be like. I've personally gained so much insight from Jon's teachings and from the comments and feedbacks we've gotten, so have you. This series has been so eye-opening and important as there are not many in Jon's field who are aware of this information, much less are speaking out. I ask that you all give Jon your full attention as he takes us on a journey of self-discovery through clinical science and experience Jon has garnered simply because he had the courage to care. They say not all heroes wear capes, and nothing could be more true of Jon. Well, it's
Good to
great to
be back.
have you back. This has been such a life-changing experience for people. I've been getting more and more feedback. We have a constant sort of crowd that shows up every Tuesday now to indulge in your episodes, and they're getting a lot out of it.
That's
This is
good.
changing people's lives. It's helping them understand their loved ones, and it's also helping people who have gone through really hard things understand themselves. So this has been really, really powerful. And I know we have a really exciting show today. We're going to not necessarily deviate, but we're going to take sort of a side. We're going to branch out from the tree that we planted and go down a branch of the tree that's going to tackle a really important topic to understand more deeply the systems and parts within a survivor. Let's get into this second preparation that you have made for us. So for people listening and who have been following along, Jon has put together this incredible visual for us about systems and parts and the different layers of it. And for the past however many weeks, we have been diving into it and sort of reverse engineering, starting from foundational layers and moving deeper into the system and seeing how parts work together, seeing the overall picture of what a system is, and then even doing some role play and some fun and interesting scenarios that could happen between alters and parts within a system and how it affects the entire person. And
And
really,
you were a very good sport, by the way. You did a wonderful job.
that was pretty fun. And I hope
That
people
was good. That
listening,
was good.
that's a good exercise to do with people. It's pretty humbling to do that. And very, it helps grow your empathy, in my opinion, whenever you get to sort of be in that position. So that was kind of fun, Jon. But I'd love for you to talk about this opportunity that you were given recently to go on somebody else's podcast. And you've done a bunch of podcasts, but this one I think is a really special opportunity. And the topic that they wanted you to talk about, you created an entirely new visual that sort of ties into the systems and parts and can help us understand that better. So I'd love for you to share the good news of what you've been up to and then to talk about what we'll be talking about tonight.
Well, thank you, Emma. And this did come from a podcast I was recently on. It's called the Counterculture Mom Show. And it was a good opportunity. She actually heard from about your show, about the work we're doing. And so they reached out and they asked, would I be willing to come on the program? So I did so. And I figured since they wanted to know about SRA, then I figured the thing that would be most helpful is to not only show the chart that we've been working through, but also how does an adult get to that point where they're willing to perpetrate upon a child? Because once I understand that, then I won't be so susceptible to when people, the naysayers, or even those that question, say, you don't really believe in SRA, do you? Right? And then you have the extreme, the false memory foundation fraud folks, right? So the perps that want to throw people off track or don't want scrutiny, all the way to people that have a hard time believing. Quite frankly, once upon a time, I was someone that didn't believe in SRA. Well, I didn't believe in MPD at that time. I was called now DID. I didn't believe in any of that at all. So I certainly wouldn't have believed in SRA. So, this is coming from a guy, let alone a therapist. At some point, early in my career, I would have thought this was stupid and crazy talk. Now I know too much. So that's why I'm very matter of fact. So anybody, including the non-satanic satanic temple, those folks, right? That I'm still waiting for my invitation to debate. Whatever his
Greaves, where's the
right? He said we could debate. I'm not here. It's just crickets. So
yep.
Okay, but I'm happy to debate anybody because I'm their worst nightmare in this sense. As far as a therapist, I don't use hypnosis. I don't use EMDR. All I had to do is take the test because I went through the training course in EMDR. I don't do guided imagery. That's just who I am. I stay away from all that. In order to help a survivor really understand that this really happened, it's, in my estimation, what my experience has shown is one of the key issues that keeps somebody stuck is the internal struggle to try to figure out two things. Could somebody that says they care about me, or said they care about me, said they love me, said I was special, or should care about me, how could they possibly do that? So now we have this wide divergent contradiction. That's what we call the basis of trauma bonding, which is actually just half-baked healing. So it's either that a parent did this or somebody that supposedly cared about the kid, or the intensity, the attempt to try to figure out, could somebody be so evil so as to do that? How could somebody? Nobody could be that evil. So you've got two things that will keep somebody stuck. One is the internal contradiction, trying to reconcile somebody that loved me, said they loved me, said that I was special, is doing this. So how do I reconcile that? And could any adult be that evil? That will stop a survivor from really placing the knapsacks where they belong. Because ultimately, who's responsible for this? Did you cause any of this? Because, of course, the perpetrator will tell you in one way or another. They'll tell you caused this. They'll tell the survivor, they'll tell the kid as they're harming the kid that they have to do this. This is what is necessary. I mean, in ways, they'll say that. You've been chosen, you're special, and now they inflict harm. So in order to heal, in order to place the knapsacks of responsibility where they belong, and that's really the goal of therapy, I want survivors to be able to see that SRA really is possible. MK Ultra really is possible as far as an adult being willing to be that kind of perpetrator. And how do they get that way? Because, of course, the naysayers and the now defunct False Memory Foundation, their premise is this. Basically, that would never happen because an adult would never be so evil.
Investigating ritualistic child sex abuse, the Utah County Sheriff's Office says this case dates back decades, but they're now just getting leads. Our ABC4's Courtney Johns joining us in studio live with the latest on this disturbing investigation. Courtney.
Yeah, Emily, information is extremely limited right now. No one has been arrested yet, but authorities say they're starting to make some headway in the case and are hoping by sharing this information, more people come forward.
It's hard to believe that somebody would do this to another human being.
Sergeant Spencer Cannon says he has never come across a case like this in his career.
It's very, very disturbing.
Cannon wouldn't get into specifics, but says they believe it happened in Utah, Juab, and San Pete counties between 1990 and 2010. Ritualistic child sex abuse and trafficking.
It's typically by a group of people, two or more people that are involved in it, and not just somebody's uncle or brother or sister or whatever that's involved in individual cases or incidents of abuse, but more of an organized effort.
Cannon not commenting on if the organized effort was religious, but confirming victims first started coming forward a few months ago.
But we have gotten to the point where we believe we have been able to verify some of the information that we've been told, and that has led us to believe that it's likely that there are others out there who have been victimized and may have been intimidated or threatened into silence, and we want to help them out.
That's why the Utah County Sheriff's Office is talking about the case. Within an hour of sending out a press release, Cannon personally has already received 2 calls.
Where those calls will lead, we don't know yet, but we'll follow the information that is given to us and take it wherever it leads.
We also asked Cannon if the public is in danger at this time. He says they have no specific threats right now, but until they find out who is exactly behind all of this, they can't really say there's no danger. Back to you.
All right, more to come on this story. Thanks so much. Welcome to ABC 4 News at 10. I'm Glenn Mills.
And I'm Emily Flores. We thank you for joining us here on this Wednesday night. From allegations of ritualistic child sex abuse to murder and cannibalism, the Utah County Attorney says the sheriff is opening a case that goes back decades, claiming it has no merit, saying it's a political move just weeks before the primary election. ABC 4's Courtney Johns joining us live in studio with more on the investigation and what both sides are saying tonight. Courtney?
Yeah, Emily, it all started last night when the Utah County Sheriff's Office said they were investigating ritualistic child sex abuse they believe happened between 1990 and 2010. While the Sheriff's Office did not name any suspects, Utah County Attorney David Levitt said he just learned he and his wife are listed in an investigative report.
Having read the 151 pages of utter baloney, my heart goes out to the 15 or 20 innocent citizens whose names are implicated, whose reputations are besmirched. I'm sorry that someone's effort at eliminating me as an elected prosecutor has hurt you.
Not providing the investigative report during a press conference, Utah County Attorney David Levitt says this document connects him and his wife to allegations of murder and cannibalism.
I don't know what they're investigating, but if it has anything to do with this therapist and the report of 25 years ago, that is 100% false.
Levitt says that therapist was accused of sexual assault.
He was my neighbor. I had a family connection.
Saying the case was dismissed, Levitt adds the person who provided the statement is mentally ill.
I take exception to any victim who comes forward and is characterized as tragically mentally ill. How dare you?
Sheriff Mike Smith responding, saying he never named Levitt or any suspect, and more than one victim has come forward.
Levitt is using his authority and his pulpit to bully, distract, and mischaracterize the facts of an ongoing investigation.
Smith says the first victim came forward back in April of 2021 and had nothing to do with the case Levitt shared with the press today, adding that several law enforcement agencies are now involved, including the FBI.
And I challenge Sheriff Smith not only to open his office for an investigation, not only to suspend Spencer Cannon pending that investigation, but to resign himself if it can be demonstrated that his office is being used for such illicit political purposes.
Sheriff Smith also adds that since information on the investigation.
Top prosecutor and sheriff sparred publicly today in a bizarre series of news conferences.
County Attorney David Levitt called for Sheriff Mike Smith to resign if, as he suspects, An investigation Smith announced this week is politically motivated. KSL investigator Daniela Rivera joins us now to explain. Danny?
Well, the Utah County Sheriff's Office announced yesterday they're investigating claims of ritualistic child sexual abuse from decades ago, and they called for victims and witnesses to come forward. They did not release any names or point to specific cases, but today the county attorney did. David Levitt shared in a news conference that he is named in a victim statement from a 10-year-old case.
That the Sheriff's Office is using its position for political gain.
Claims outlined in a 151-page victim statement from a 2012 case against a therapist named Utah County Attorney David Levitt and several others.
Alleging that we were guilty of cannibalizing young children and murdering young children.
The case was dropped. Levitt says he never knew about the statement naming him until a reporter gave him the document yesterday. The same day, the sheriff's office made a vague announcement calling for victims of ritualistic sexual child abuse between 1990 and 2010 to come forward. Now, Levitt calls that effort a political attack.
Why is it occurring 7 days before the ballots drop in my election?
Levitt now calling for an investigation into the sheriff's office, accusing law enforcement of leaking the victim statement.
And if there is such a link, then I call upon him to resign.
And taking aim at the woman who named him years ago, over and over repeating this claim about her mental health.
By that tragically mentally ill woman.
How dare you? These are victims of crime who have mustered the courage to come forward. And this is what we call them, is mentally ill.
Utah County Sheriff Mike Smith holding his own news conference a couple hours later.
He released a lot of information. He did. That we never would have released.
He notes Levitt is the one who publicly attached himself to their investigation. And they intend to continue forward, along with several other agencies involved, including the FBI. But they are not naming who they consider to be suspects.
Again, we won't be intimidated by Mr. Levitt, by his attempts to derail our investigation. We will continue to do our jobs.
Levitt insists the fact that the old case was dropped signals the claims were baseless, but admits he has not reviewed it himself.
This case was dismissed almost 10 years before I took office.
And you have access to the case file then, correct?
I can find it. Yeah, it's in the archive someplace.
Have you not looked at it?
No, it's going to take several days.
Meanwhile, the sheriff says their investigation is based on more than one person's word.
There are multiple victims involved in this case, and there are multiple victims corroborating information between their accounts.
The sheriff says his agency did not release any documents related to the investigation, but the KSL investigators did obtain a copy of the victim statement, and we did so through a public records request to the Provo Police Department. Dan and Deanie?
A lot to still sort out on this one, Daniela. Thank you. More developing news tonight. Multiple local and federal law enforcement agencies are investigating ritualistic sexual abuse, also human trafficking of children all over Utah. Fox 13 News investigative reporter Adam Herbets has been following the story and takes a closer look.
Well, the Utah County Sheriff's Office opened this case in April 2021, but according to our confidential sources, they are not starting from scratch. Here's what the department is willing to share so far. Reports of ritualistic sexual abuse and human trafficking involving children in at least these three areas: Utah County, San Pete County, and Juab County between the years of 1990 and 2010. The Sheriff's Office has not released any other specifics. However, we have learned some of the subjects of this investigation are high-profile individuals.
We're just being as careful as we can before we toss names out. Any given individual, it's the way it is. I mean, the chips fall where they are, and we follow them.
One of them was a therapist who was previously charged with similar crimes against young female family members, but not convicted. For the past few months, I have also been reviewing police reports and body camera video related to that case. As part of our investigation, we continue to review records related to potential targets of this investigation. We will bring you updates as we confirm more with law enforcement.
Criminal charges, we believe it'll get to that point, but we just haven't gotten there yet. The sooner, the better. We don't want to let anything sit longer than is necessary.
The message at this point for any victims or anyone with information is to please call the Utah County Sheriff's Office. Reporting in studio tonight, Adam Herbetz, Fox 13 News, Utah.
Well, the Utah County Sheriff's Office is now concerned there may be people connected to this case that have been silenced. If you have any information that could help in this investigation, please call the number on your screen. It's 801-851-4010.
Today, prosecutors talked about the case in court. Tonight, Fox 13 News investigative reporter Adam Herbetz joins us in studio with information about another suspect with ties to Levitt. Adam.
Yeah, Bob Kelly, we want to be clear. We never named David Levitt or anyone else as a suspect, and neither did investigators tied to this case. Most agencies don't want to talk about it, but today in court, a judge asked many of the same questions we've been asking. And for that reason, we finally got a few more answers about the direction of this investigation.
This is not a politically motivated investigation.
The announcement from the Utah County Sheriff's Office 3 months ago was vague, but it spread fast. A message that detectives are investigating ritualistic child sex abuse across 3 different counties over a 20-year time frame.
I mean, the allegations that are there are so outlandish and so crazy that they're just not true.
Fox 13 News has chosen not to name any of the suspects at this time, but that did not stop Utah County Attorney David Levitt from naming himself, announcing he is not a murderer, a cannibal, or a child sex abuser.
There is no organized ring of abuse. It was debunked more than 10 years ago. It was dismissed.
He says it was politically motivated, but even his own employees now say they disagree.
I would take exception to the suggestion that this is politically motivated. This is about trying to do the right thing for the investigation.
Even though Levitt has been the most vocal suspect, he is not the only one. Another figure accused of being part of the child sex abuse was just in court today, trying to get his record expunged. This is his attorney.
I think it may be politically motivated.
Now the Utah Attorney General's office is assuring people, again, this case is not political. Levitt already lost his bid for re-election, but the investigation is still open.
Your Honor, this is the investigative file. So there is about 1,000 pages of information there.
The Utah County Sheriff's Office says more than 130 people have called in tips so far regarding this investigation.
And I can sense the fear in the voice of some of these people who have called us.
Sergeant Spencer Cannon with the Utah County Sheriff's Office says investigators have listened to more than 130 tips, most of them credible, but he could not say how many mentioned Hamblin. The case has been open since April of last year, but this year, also in April, a new female victim came forward, helping the Sheriff's Office get to the point where they felt ready to make an arrest. Do you expect there will be additional arrests?
We do at some point, yes. Yeah, this is it's very active. We have victims we're still working with, and so we anticipate that we'll have other arrests to make in this case.
The Utah County Sheriff's Office has arrested its first suspect in a ritualistic child sex abuse investigation, but they think there will be more arrests. Fox 13 News investigative reporter Adam Herbetz has been following this story all year. He joins us live in studio with this evening's update. Adam.
Yeah, Bob, we have been accumulating information on this man, David Hamblin, since February. Today, the Sheriff's Office confirmed its investigation does not stop with his arrest. There are still multiple victims, multiple suspects. Each story is different, but the common thread is that the allegations are very disturbing. Let's look. The first time we heard David Hamblin's name was in 2012, charged with 18 felony counts of sex abuse against multiple family members. This video shows Provo police spending months conducting interviews. Then they recorded an undercover phone call where he confessed, "I am sorry for raping you. I'm not saying somebody in my body didn't do it." The Utah County Attorney's Office dropped the charges.
We are now learning more about the man arrested and charged in Utah County on suspicion of ritualistic child sex abuse. Also his ties to Utah County Attorney David Levitt, who will not be allowed to prosecute the case. Fox 13 investigative reporter Adam Herbitz is in studio tonight with more. Adam.
Kelly, there are a number of reasons why the Utah County Attorney's Office might have a conflict of interest. Not just because Levitt named himself as a suspect earlier this year. He's also given multiple statements about his relationship with David Hamblin and some of the alleged victims. As you're about to see, the nature of those statements have changed over the past 2 years.
Would you mind riding in the back of a police car?
Men and women allege David Hamblin used positions of power as a father, a therapist, a neighbor, and as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to ritualistically abuse children. He was arrested Wednesday morning, but investigators say he probably won't be the only one.
I have nothing to hide.
Until Hamblin's arrest, Fox 13 News chose not to identify any of the subjects of the investigation. But that did not stop Utah County Attorney David Levitt from outing himself as a suspect in June and describing his relationship with Hamblin.
I prosecuted the therapist in Juab County for poaching a deer. He poached a deer to use for ritualistic purposes. This therapist was my elders quorum president in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He was my neighbor. I had a family connection.
During that same press conference, Levitt described his accuser as tragically mentally ill. She's one of the same women who accused Hamblin and others.
Shame on you for doing that. It's uncalled for. He said tragically mentally ill woman 5 times. To attack their mental health status as a way to discredit them, and it was clear that that's what he was doing, and that's just not okay.
There is no organized ring of abuse. It was debunked more than 10 years ago.
But watch and listen. More than 2 years before that press conference, Levitt sat down for a different interview and was asked if he thought ritualistic sex abuse was real. He went on to describe Hamblin and his own accuser, calling her a victim.
Do I think that occurs? Yeah, I think it occurs. I know some victims of it. Yeah, I know some victims of it. I was not in a position to prosecute it. Who was into Native American stuff, had killed deer and get deer hearts and drink their blood and drink the deer's blood.
At the time, Levitt was under investigation by Homeland Security. These clips are now evidence in that case.
How do you train a dog to roll over when it's time to roll over? You know, you do it by giving a reward and repetition.
Yesterday, after Hamblin's arrest, we asked David Levitt through his spokesperson for a comment. We were told, no, he does not comment on pending cases. Apparently, that did not stop him in June. Live in studio, Adam Herbitz, Fox 13 News, Utah.
Now to our other top story. Breaking news in Utah County tonight. A former child protection official with the Utah Attorney General's office has now been rearrested on charges of aggravated sexual abuse of a child.
Kelly, Gary Lee Bell was recently released on other child pornography charges. We want to warn you, some details of this story are disturbing and may not be appropriate for all viewers. Fox 13 News reporter Spencer Joseph joins us from the Utah County Sheriff's Office tonight. Spencer.
Good evening, and he is actually in the jail right behind us, and he's facing 14 charges, 2 first-degree felonies, 12 second-degree felonies. Now, as you said, he was recently released by a judge after being accused of possession of child pornography. But after the investigation moved forward and they looked into his devices, it was found that allegedly he wasn't only in possession of these terrible, terrible images, he was producing them as well.
He had been released by a judge and was at home at that time. I think it was about a week ago that he was released by a judge, and they rearrested him and booked him into jail on additional charges.
A man who worked in the Child Protection Division of the Utah Attorney General's office has been arrested again, now for the alleged production of child pornography, after being released by a judge a week ago while facing charges of possession of child pornography. 66-year-old Gary Bell was rearrested and faces 12 counts of sexual exploitation of a minor, a first-degree felony for aggravated sexual abuse of a child, and another first-degree felony for sodomy of a child. The charges come after a lengthy investigation into Bell's devices, finding images that matched walls and furniture in photos investigators took at his home.
Pictures and video that they had now showed Mr. Bell actually perpetrating these acts against at least one child.
Court documents, too graphic to show in their entirety, outline that the victim in some of these photos was a 1 to 2-year-old. Bell spent a number of years in the Utah AG's office working on cases involving children.
Do you believe that his position factored into this in any way?
You know, it's hard to tell, and we don't know when he may have turned this direction, whether he's been that way for decades and has just never been caught, or whether it's something that was a more recent development. No matter how we look at it, it's to say that it's a disappointment is more than a mild understatement.
In an update now for you, a Provo clinical health counselor is facing yet another charge, this time of sexual abuse against a 13-year-old. 64-year-old Scott Owen is already facing 4 felonies, accused of sexually assaulting gay men. The new charge is his 11th in all, with a first-degree felony of touching a child. In the new allegations, a woman says she started therapy with Owen in 2007 when she was 13 to help her deal with the loss of a parent. During the therapy, the woman claims Owen had her sit on his lap, telling her the religious authority which he claimed he had would pass from him into her and make her not feel sad. We're following the case for you, and we will bring you updates as they happen.
The ex-wife of the man accused of abusing his position as a therapist to sexually abuse children has now been accused of similar crimes. 70-year-old Roselle Stevenson stands accused of abusing a 13-year-old girl in Spring City, this back in 1994. Her ex-husband, David Hamlin, is accused of sex crimes in Utah, Juab, and Sanpete counties in the same time period. He was arrested back in 2022, and Utah County investigators have confirmed their cases are related. Stevenson is being held in the Utah County Jail without bail.
There's such a prejudice in the Native community about a non-Native adopting a Native.
This is not how you adopt a child. This is how you procure a child.
The Fox 13 News investigative team has obtained video of Utah County Attorney David Levitt talking about how he adopted a Native American child.
The video shows Levitt explaining how he tried to broker a deal with a tribe in Montana, offering them the ability to export buffalo meat to Ukraine as part of a request he made at the same time to adopt the child.
Fox 13 News investigative reporter Adam Herbets found out why the statements made in this video are part of a long-standing criminal investigation.
And Tribal Social Services looked at us and said, "We're not giving you this baby."
This video was recorded by a documentarian in 2020. It's 17 minutes long, and it shows Utah County Attorney David Levitt telling the story of how he managed to adopt a tribal infant in 2017.
And finally, this strategy comes into my head. And if you got 5 minutes, I'll tell you the story.
As he describes it, his strategy meant hopping on a plane to Montana, then walking onto the reservation unscheduled to meet with the president of the Northern Cheyenne tribe.
I said, I'm here for 2 reasons. I said, I'm here to tell you the second reason first, but I'll tell you the first reason second. And I said, but before I tell you the second reason, I want to tell you a story.
His story touches on the importance of family. Then it highlights his close friendship with former Ukrainian President Viktor Yushchenko.
Victor and I have this goal of introducing buffalo into Western Ukraine. And you're a sovereign nation, and you have a buffalo herd, And Ukraine is a sovereign nation, and it doesn't have a buffalo herd, but it wants one. And so I'm here to try and see if we can form a bilateral agreement between the people of the Northern Cheyenne and the people of Ukraine to introduce buffalo to Western Ukraine. And at that point, you know, he was all ears.
I bet.
And I said, that's the second reason why I'm here. The first reason why I'm here is this, that we want to adopt one of your people.
He says tribal president Jace Kilsback gave his blessing, but tribal social services did not. So Levitt went back to the president to try again. Watch and listen to how he describes the tribal president made a compelling argument to help Levitt clear that final hurdle and take home the child that same day.
He said, listen, the Levitts are friends of the tribe. They're assets to the tribe for more than just this. I left, and 5 minutes later, the phone rang, and it was the social worker saying, I think I figured out a way to get this child to you.
Jace Kilsback has declined to comment. At the time of this interview, he was in prison for fraud in an unrelated case.
Not every child needs to grow up in the city, green grass, white picket fence house. It's best for the Native children to remain in Native communities.
Stephanie Benally, a Native American specialist for Utah foster care, is not just giving her opinion in this interview. She's describing federal law, the Indian Child Welfare Act. It was passed in 1978 to protect Native American children from being adopted by non-Native families.
Prior to the act, 25 to 35% of Native children were removed from their home and placed in non-Native homes.
There's such a prejudice in the Native community about a non-Native adopting a Native.
Levitt says the child is family. Technically, she's his step, foster, great niece. They might not be related by blood, but ultimately, the tribe gets to decide who's considered family. According to court documents, the child's biological mother willingly gave up her parental rights, but the biological father did not. The court ultimately ruled in Levitt's favor, approving the adoption.
Let me put it this way. I would like our elected officials to be servants of the public and not self-serving.
Linda F. Smith is a member of the Utah State Bar Ethics Advisory Opinion Committee. She also taught ethics at the University of Utah for more than 30 years. She says the video is concerning in more ways than one.
He was clearly politicking to get his way. It was a little smarmy, a way to talk somebody into letting you adopt a child that might otherwise be better raised by the tribe.
David Levitt is the same county attorney who named himself as the subject of a ritualistic child sex abuse investigation. Last month, he announced he is not a murderer, a cannibal, or an abuser. And he accused the Utah County Sheriff of playing politics right before the primary, even though Levitt was not publicly named.
This is not a politically motivated investigation.
I mean, is it disturbing? Yeah, it is. You have to kind of separate that and not let emotions affect your investigation at all.
Noel Engels is a former analyst with Homeland Security. He confirmed his team had been investigating sexual allegations against Levitt for several years. Then in 2020, Homeland Security received the video and started investigating for human trafficking.
It's literally our job, is to make sure children are safe.
5 months after receiving the video, documents show Noel and his team were removed from the case. He has since filed a whistleblower complaint and received back this letter. You allege that Homeland Security improperly terminated an investigation into allegations involving current Utah County Attorney David Levitt. We emphasize that while the Office of Special Counsel has found a substantial likelihood of wrongdoing based on the information you submitted in support of your allegations, our referral to the Secretary for Investigation is not a final determination that the allegations are substantiated.
This is not how you adopt a child. This is how you procure a child.
We reached out to David Levitt for an explanation last week. His spokesperson said he would be happy to tell the entire story, but not until after tomorrow's election, because they believe, quote, this has no bearing on his performance as Utah County Attorney and is not relevant. We want you to know we are publishing the full 17-minute clip online at fox13now.com. Reporting in studio tonight, Adam Herbets, Fox 13 News, Utah.
There is no organized ring of abuse. It was debunked.
But watch and listen. More than 2 years before that press conference, Levitt sat down for a different interview and was asked if he thought ritualistic sex abuse was real. He went on to describe Hamblin and his own accuser, calling her a victim.
Do I think that occurs? Yeah, I think it occurs. I know some victims of it.
With tears in her eyes and her voice shaking, Kara decided to testify about the girl in this picture.
I'm speaking up for her. She's the bravest little girl. And if I could go back in time, I would hug her and tell her she is beautiful.
Her testimony convinced a panel of lawmakers to move forward with a bill that would criminalize ritualistic sex abuse. Many of the details surrounding that type of abuse are so graphic, we can't even describe it on television.
This is horrific, heinous, vile conduct. I had a survivor tell me that as a child, she was told that they had planted a bomb inside of her, and that if she told anyone, they could detonate the bomb. There is a general culture in child sexual abuse that it's bad to tell. Someone will hurt you if you tell. They'll hurt your family members if you tell. They won't believe you if you tell.
Chains, cannibalism, child prostitution.
She says the girl in the picture didn't tell either. But today, she had the biggest audience of her life. See, Kara was holding her own picture with a handful of other survivors backing her up.
Today was a victory for my little girl self that had her voice stolen, and no more.
There's been a lot of talk about ritual abuse in Utah over the past 2 years. You might remember this man, Brett Bluth, from an interview we did in 2022. After the Utah County Sheriff's Office received more than 130 tips of ritualistic sex abuse.
Hypnosis was a big part of it. Torture therapy, suffocation therapy, rape therapy.
He says he was assaulted by his therapist, David Hamblin, who was arrested and charged on suspicion of similar crimes involving other alleged victims. Representative Ken Ivory says cases happen more than we realize, which is why the law needs to change.
You know, I'd kind of heard a little bit some of the things in the news. It wasn't really something fully in my awareness, but now I've got a constituent that this is her story. She just started to cry and she said, they believe me. The legislature believed me.
Because they know that because they do not trust me and Gabriel.
Yeah.
That because they say that not to tell anyone about this.
Okay.
But they do not trust us. So they stick in a plastic willy in our bum where so where the poo comes out.
Okay, so they put a plastic willy in the bum where the poo comes out. Okay.
Yes.
And anywhere else?
Yes, in our front private.
Okay.
And then they
you say our front private. Who are you talking about?
No. So if we say it hurts or if we cry or make a sound, they'll give us spoon licks. So they'll get a spoon.
Spoon licks?
Yes.
What does that mean?
So they get spoons and then they hit us on the head.
Okay.
That's when whenever we come back to our mum, she always says, she doesn't say, but that's why we always got bumps on our heads.
Okay.
But she doesn't say, why do you have bumps on your head? She doesn't say that.
What happens on a Wednesday, please?
Wednesday is the most busiest day of sex. And today it's Wednesday, and if I was right now on Wednesday in school, they would have done lots and lots of sex to me. And Wednesday is the most sex day, and it's the most busiest day. When we do sex, they give out lots of sweets, really much of sweets, and this is also the day when they give us lots of sweets and money too.
They give you money?
Yeah, they have the willies in my bottom. They touch my private sexually. They kick my private. They rub it until the white stuff comes out.
Who's Kafkas?
You know, there's people who work at Kafkas.
What is Kafkas?
Kafkas is that they're for children. They work with the social services.
And what did they do to you?
They do sex. They touch each other. They touch me and Gabriel. They have plastic quillings and they stick it in our bottom.
Who does? Who sticks it in your bottom?
Social services. Everybody does. All of them.
Who?
Everybody.
Does your mother do it?
No.
Do I do it?
No.
Who does it then?
Papa, Mr. Hollings, the school.
Who?
Parents. My dad's
Tell me more people. Tell me some more people, please. I'm interested.
Parents, police.
What about the teachers at school? Who's the main one?
Papa, Mr. Hollings, Mrs. Forsyth.
Who's Mrs. Forsyth?
She's the head teacher of our school.
And what does she do?
And she does sex. She got a big knot with a big tattoo on her pride.
And what happens in the church?
And we do baby sacrifice and eat the baby.
What do you mean sacrifice and eat the baby?
So we kill the baby and eat it and drink the blood from it.
Is that true, Gabriel?
Yes. And we dance with the skulls.
You what?
We dance with the skulls in the church.
What skulls?
Skulls of the baby.
Pardon?
Baby skulls. The skulls of the baby.
You dance with the baby skulls?
Yes.
And who kills the babies?
Papa, me, Elisa, and
who kills the babies?
Papa.
And what, he gets you to help him?
Yes.
Shoot.
So he tells us to hold the hand with a knife, and then he holds his hand on our hand, so then he cuts the baby's head off. And then he tips it upside down, and then we drain the blood.
And then what they do?
And then we cook it, and then we drink the blood, and then after we...
I was on a Wednesday, please.
Wednesday is the most busiest day of sex.
There is no organized ring of abuse. It was debunked.
But watch and listen. More than 2 years before that press conference, Levitt sat down for a different interview and was asked if he thought ritualistic sex abuse was real.
Do I think that occurs? Yeah, I think it occurs. I know some victims of it. Yeah, I know some victims of it. I was not in a position to prosecute it.
He went on to describe Hamblin,
who was into Native American stuff. He'd kill deer and get deer hearts and drink their blood and drink the deer's blood.
These clips are now evidence in that case. We want to warn you, some of them are very graphic.
How do you train a dog to roll over when it's time to roll over? You know, you do it by giving a reward and repetition. If a man wants to program some little girl to give immoral sex anytime he wants to, you start young and give rewards. I mean, it's unfortunately I've never, it's the same way you help a child learn how to make their bed.
So that's what we're going to address. I'm going to show you. We'll start. So Emma, you and I are talking. We're going to show the audience a chart. It's actually going to continue to be developed, and we'll continue to make our way through it now for a few weeks. So survivors, and those that need to help survivors, I would say pastors, need to really understand this, because if pastors are being effective, guess who's going to come to their congregation? Those that are broken, those that are hurting. Well, conservatively, 40%, I believe it's about 60% of all the females in the congregation, about 20% of men sitting in that auditorium have been sexually violated at some point in time when they were younger. That's a lot of people. So if you have broken people that came from trauma, that came from sexual trauma, a pastor needs to understand that this is complex, but also that there is a degree of sexual perpetration that goes way beyond the imagination of any normal person. But it really happens. And I can speak to that because of my 15 years of forensic work with the full continuum and range of sex offenders. So working 11 years on psychology staff for the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections, having started the nation's first intensive treatment program in long-term solitary, having run a specialized forensic unit, a 65-bed unit for a year, run the therapy for sexually violent predators, SVPs. That's a designation by a judge. Have run low and high intensity sex offender treatment, have done hundreds of sex offender evaluations, have done hundreds of sex offender risk assessments, and now run 5 sex offender treatment groups currently per week in the community for men on parole. So I know this subject pretty well. I had access to all criminal histories, all criminal records. No academic researcher would ever have that. So the amount of information I have is very compelling. And so I dug deep into the criminal mind. I dug deep into the sexual psychopathic mind. And I have put together a number of charts, and we're going to look at now a compilation so that people can understand that those that sexually offend in the way that we're talking about are not victims. They're perpetrators. And the kind that we're talking about, and this will be challenging for some who are going to listen to this right now. My premise is, and I would submit to you, this is not multi-generational, the level that we're talking about. This is a choice to be evil. That's different. Now, this is important too. That's different than if a perp re-triggered a survivor and a childlike part came out. And before you know it, they're in Paris. They may be in their early 20s, but what part is out? A child. But as far as their body and chronological age, what's the age of the person that plunged the knife into the victim when they were at the altar surrounded by the perps? The 20-year-old. It's that child that did it, but ultimately that 20-year-old body did it. So if the police were to rush in, guess where that 20-year-old body is going? So it's really important for survivors and those that are listening to your program aren't taking it seriously. That's the only reason why they're listening to your program. That's the only reason why they're listening. So they're doing the right thing. So the question is, why are they even listening? Because they want to get better. They want to make sure it doesn't happen anymore. So for those that as adults think that they may have participated, then repentance is needed. Then you go before God, read Psalm 32. Okay, it's going to be a really important psalm. And then continue the work so that it doesn't happen, so that you can disconnect from the power of it. How do you do it? Ultimately, is by looking at what we're talking about. It's by looking at the people that convinced you. Okay, we've used the term, or it's been used, programming. But again, I'm going to use the term, those that convinced you, those that tricked you, but those that were really good at really convincing you, don't believe you're smart enough to ever figure this out. But once you figure this out, then the truth will set you free. What is this when you figure this out? The nature of who it was that was tricking you. It's one thing as a child for an adult to put a knife in a child's hand and make a child do something. But if I'm a 20-year-old, I can get away. If they're putting me on a plane, I can get away. I mean, all things being equal, unless they hog-tie me, but then they're risking going to prison. So if they put me back under the spell, so to speak, unless I break that spell, and I'm not using that in the witchcraft term, meaning if I go back under, then they do have power over me. So I have to break the programming, but it's really, I have to allow the truth to sink in to where that power they have over me to do a look, to do a say, to do, to trigger me to all of a sudden where the child comes out, I have to do the work necessary to where they can be flipped and switches all day long. And look at Carrie Elahe. She not only named names, she showed the perp's picture. Guess who doesn't have power over her anymore? She's free. Now, she's still working through things, but I tell you what, that perp ain't going to walk across the street and stare at her and, do his little thing with his ring or whatever. Do you think she's going to walk out in that, that dissociative state anymore? No way. She's free. So Periolahe is no longer going to take a knife and plunge it into the heart of a child. As an adult, that childlike part isn't going to come out. Well, if anybody should always be under that sway, it should be Carrie. How did she do it? It's this normal process. You come to terms with the truth and let that truth sink way down deep inside. The connections are gone. The ties are gone. It's over. Now you're free. You still have to go through the healing process, but you're out. You walked out of the prison camp. You're no longer in the POW camp. You are free. They don't have control over you. The only kind of control they would have over you then is the overt kind where they're going to go to prison. That means grab you, manhandle you, and, well, they're not going to do that because they're cowards. So the way to break the spell, so to speak, they're old-fashioned. I don't mean literal spell. I don't believe in spells, by the way. No Christian should believe in a spell. I'll tell you why. What is a spell? Okay, this is all the occult, right? Think about the occult. It's all the power of words, okay? Last time I checked, there's only one entity in the entire universe that has the power in his words to speak into existence, and that is God. No angelic being, no angel has the power to create anything. They're a created being. So everybody needs to, it's really important. Just because somebody curses me, by the way, if somebody wants to curse me, go for it. You wouldn't be the first. I ain't scared. I'm not bothered in the least. Why? Not only does the Book of Proverbs says an undeserved curse doesn't come to rest like a fluttering sparrow or a darting swallow. Okay. They say, well, you deserve it, so it's going to come to rest. No. The only person that can curse actually is God. If God curses you, you're done. Why? Because he can make it happen. Satan can't create by words. He can maneuver behind the scenes. We end up giving Satan way too much credit. Sometimes we end up not giving him enough credit, okay? Because, listen, Michael the Archangel had respect for it, went toe-to-toe with him, but had respect for him. It's like an MMA fighter, okay? But angels can't create anything. They're created beings. Lucifer, who became Satan because his nature changed, because he became a deceiver, is what Lucifer means. He's just one of the three top angels. Now, can he do a lot of damage? Look what he did to Job. Of course he can, but only if God permits. And it doesn't mean that God takes delight. God is enraged when injustice happens. But it's really important for people to know, especially those that have been through SRA, through MKUltra, that God is the one with the power. So your mind is protected. There are no demons on the inside for Christians. God doesn't rent space with demons. When the Holy Spirit comes in, guess what? Now, in that verse, by the way, where it says, if the house is swept clean, it's not filled, you can cast demons out of someone and them not become a Christian. That's what he's talking about. So if you've had demons cast out and you didn't ask God to fill you, then you run the risk, don't you? So I recommend become a Christian so that your house is filled. But there certainly are a lot of their demonic attacks, demonic oppression. That's all very real. And trust me, right? Jesus was oppressed. Paul was oppressed. Anybody that God's going to use is going to be oppressed. But that's different than anything on the inside. And that's different than, can curses come to rest? No. So can programming be such that, just like tweaking the hard drive, going in and doing something? No. So you weren't programmed. You were really, really persuaded, not because you couldn't figure out, but you were young. And they were really persuasive. And if they involved demonic activity, how is a kid supposed to figure out that what's really going on? So if you were raped by somebody who was demon possessed, and he said, Satan's coming inside you, or you're now, what you're going to deliver is the spawn of Satan, it's not true. Why? Because spirit is different than flesh and bones. So the demon inside the guy looking at you that you could smell was tricking you. That's really important to know. I didn't intend to talk about that, but that's really important to know. And if you take issue with that, you know what? Let it sink in. Because what are the implications if I'm wrong? Nothing. You're back to where you were. But what are the implications if I'm right? I'll tell you what the implications are. You're going to be set free. You're going to have a greater degree of security, knowing that Satan doesn't have your soul. Your bloodline doesn't matter. If you've been bought with the blood of the Lamb, guess what? You've become a child of God. So I quite frankly don't care about my heritage, my lineage. God doesn't either, quite frankly. Okay, so if you're part of a certain bloodline, I recommend that you allow the truth of Scripture to do its work to set you free, which is he who the Son has set free is really free, is free indeed. It doesn't have a parentheses. Unless you are SRA or MK Ultra, then you're SOL and we wish you luck. And you get to limp along through life. It doesn't say that. That's the good news. So God wants everybody free.